This is a presentation on the Buddha's insights into conditioned life. The approach that I'll use is a bit different from a traditional Buddhist presentation, which would normally include the Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, and teachings of fundamental Buddhist principles. Instead, my approach is as a lay practitioner and as a meditator. What is of interest to me is what is accessible to us of the Buddha's experience of enlightenment and of his life before and after. Therefore, my intention is to find ways to apply the principles that the Buddha discovered in his experience of enlightenment, such that we can put them into our life. Siddhartha Gautama left the life that he had, which, like many of us, included a spouse, a baby, that which he owned, and that which was expected of him, and he went on a search. He sought to understand suffering and why all in existence seems to experience suffering, dissatisfaction, or discontent. There is an obvious other half to that question, the consideration of why satisfaction, contentment, and happiness are temporary, inevitably leading to continued discontent and more suffering. After several years of rigorous contemplation, Siddhartha experienced something precious. Within the experience that he had was the answer to his question about suffering and a bonus about everything else. He experienced the nature of mind as it is, pure awareness. Awareness not needing to be aware of anything, not engaged in any process, simply being the fundamental nature of itself, awareness mind. That experience sustained itself, and did so specifically because awareness is not engaged in any particular process. It is the mind that engages process, but not awareness itself. The experience and its sustained period was pure peace, pure radiance. It was continuous, uninterrupted by any motion of the thinking mind. It was also uninterrupted by the emoting mind, the chasing mind, the repulsing mind, all qualities that we normally experience as our mind. There was nothing to label in this peace, in this radiance, in this non-interrupted nature of awareness. No labels arose, no descriptions arose, and there were no non-arisings. That is to say that nothing chased, nothing needed to be chased, all was simply peace. After years of rigorous meditative practice, both physical and contemplative, Siddhartha allowed the very nature of awareness to simply be. He stopped trying to have it be something else or to make it happen. With awareness being simply what it is, reality and all existence were also experienced as simply waves of continuous energy, appearing and disappearing as this or that. Yet within his awareness they were without labels, and no one needed to place anything upon anything in his mind. There was no he, there was no we, there was all continuous awareness. Without the labeling of the mind, then whatever labels would normally be in our mind, such as person, bird, tree, function, all of these also were free to simply be awareness. Siddhartha allowed the awareness to simply be awareness, as awareness is. Then, as a result of that, all existence received the same allowing, and he awakened, enlightened, to the nature of the simplicity of awareness as it is in reality. There's a teaching to this for us. We work very hard, and the Buddha did too before he softened and opened to what is. That teaching for us is to realize how much force we put into our life. It is to realize how much we justify or coerce others. It is to realize, how hard we work to justify the force that we use, and how that force coerces ourselves into situations that we are unhappy with and coerces others, including animals, nature, and other people. Life then exerts a force back upon us. There's a boomerang, a ricochet that happens because we have applied force in the first place. Therefore, there's a lot of hard work going on by a lot of people, nature in response to humanity, animals in response to humanity, humanity in response to animals and to nature, etc. So as the Buddha sat under the tree, and simple peace, awareness as it is, radiance and clarity as it is, uninterrupted by any thinking, uninterrupted by any action, as all of this was upon him, he realized force, the force and the force that we use and that he had used for years in his asceticism was not going to accomplish the goal of peace. Therefore, the teaching to us is to realize force. It's to realize how pervasively it is being used in our mind, by our emotions, in our physical existence. It arises in our likes and dislikes. It is part of all of our attachments, and we can feel that force and how we grasp and cling and project and desire, and therefore our attachments are a very good litmus for us about how much force we use, and equally so our avoidances, the things that we fear, the things that we doubt, the things that we worry about, are all expressions of force. With that recognition, however, of force, anyone can choose to soften and open, to allow. And that's exactly what the Buddha did. When he realized how much effort and force that he was using, and that it was not getting him the goal being the answer to why is his suffering. He was causing his own. And so when he softened, opened, and allowed, everything changed. So we can take the example of the Buddha, or we can take the example of water, which always runs downhill. If we want to keep something dry, we know not to put it at the bottom of the hill where the water from the rain or any of the source will certainly make it wet. So if we put it in the bottom of the hill and the something gets wet, it is not because of the wetness. It is not because of the rain. It is because of what we did in the first place. This was part of the understanding of the Buddha, that by force, by asserting, that we end up with life asserting back. Whereas, as we learn to allow and allow things to be according to their nature, like awareness and its nature, then we are going to experience peace. Equally so, the Buddha, as he sat and he let labels just simply fall away. He did not attach to them, he did not chase after them, he did not try to fix anything that the label was describing, he instead just let it be. And so as we do the same to realize that a label is just a label, a description just a description, to realize that the labels that we place upon something might not actually apply. For example, a rainy day is simply a rainy day. A mosquito is simply a mosquito. And like the Buddha, as we begin to notice the layers of meaning within the labels that each of us put upon anything in existence, then we realize that those labels are layers of definitions and ascriptions and projections that might or might not apply. Going back to the example of the rainy day, the rain is necessary to cleanse the atmosphere, to bring life to everything that is alive. The mosquito is simply living a life just like you and I. So if we reactively respond to words or behaviors of others by labeling, by putting them into certain boxes and descriptions, then we have interrupted our state of peace, our state of simply allowing and being with what is of the moment. In that way, then, we are acting again in force, whether or not we realize that we are. But by softening and opening, allowing something to simply be what it is, then we experience the simplicity and the peace of what that something is. And lastly, in its initial teaching to receive from the Buddha, just simply sitting and experiencing awareness as it is, that we too can experience something akin to the Buddha. In allowing something to be what it is in the moment, we experience something other than thinking, worrying, labeling in our mind. We experience actually space, clarity, and luminosity. And if we experiment with sustaining that lack of labels, that lack of movement in our mind to label, to describe, to attach a meaning to everything, then we will experience that mind unto itself, awareness unto itself, is deleted of this mental and emotional processes that we usually think is awareness. But instead we will find simple clarity, simple space, and a continuous, non-interrupted nature of both space and clarity, because we will have not interrupted it. The Buddha sat for weeks like that under the Bodhi tree. He sat as pure awareness, uninterrupted, unlabeled, thus unnamed, thus unwordable, completely pure but not separated from whatever labels or interruptions or impurities might even arise within his mind. Because he was not trying to fix anything, not trying to do anything anymore, then the state was uninterrupted. He simply sat as pure awareness. And in that sitting, he came to the truth. The truth of why there is suffering and discontent became obvious. It is because we and all within existence interrupt, name, and label everything else as this or that. Yet that label or definition only applies in the current circumstance or in the current context. A rainy day, again, is a blessing if there's been no rain for a week. It can be a deluge otherwise, yes, but by automatically labeling the rainy day as something, as anything, we are not simply being with the awareness of participation in the rain. Also, discontent arises due to this naming, because to identify anything is to simply remove it from the interconnectedness of which it is a part. The rain is a perfect example. It is part of the interconnectedness of the totality of our planet Earth, of the totality of the weather system, of the life systems of planet Earth. So temporary happiness and temporary value arise in the same way, and they just as easily change. Therefore, as the Buddha sat uninterrupted in unwordable, pure awareness, he was also aware that the bird in the tree labeled bug and worm, and acted upon that. That the wife and son that he left labeled their emotions as sadness at his leaving. That the people he had met in his life had their life of ups and downs and labeled them as hardships and happiness. Knowing this, after weeks, the Buddha interrupted his state of simply sitting in order to report to others the discovery that had occurred within him, the discovery of innate, already present awareness that is possible as we allow, soften, and open, and abide within that pure awareness. So again, what is it teaching? What can we take into our life? That there is a continuous nature to awareness reality. Unto itself it is uninterrupted until and unless we interrupt it. This applies to the continuous self-perpetuating nature of any mind or emotions, any habit or tendency within a human being, animals, or the waves in the sea. They are continuous. They are uninterrupted. Our happiness is uninterrupted until we interrupt it with desiring something else, with distracting ourselves from our moment of awareness. And equally so, we will abide in sadness until or unless we interrupt the sadness and distract ourselves from the sadness. So the point is not if something is positive or negative, that would be a label, of course, and a functional one possibly, but the point is simply about uninterrupted. That as we cultivate less interruptions of our mind state, of our emotions, of our awareness as it is, of a moment as it is then that we realize that we have choice. We have the choice of being present. We have the choice of distraction. And so within that continuity is also the choice of change. Change is to come out of the continuity, and equally so, for many people, change would be to create a continuity. For most people who live a very distracted, mindless life, then the change would be to create the continuity of moment, to not be distracted so easily. And in doing so, what would one find? One would find more peace. One would find more equilibrium. One would find more clarity over all in our mind. And how are the ways that we interrupt or distract? We do that through anything from the TV, the iPhone, the cup of coffee, or the third cup of coffee in the day, So in any way that we can think of that we are interrupting or distracting ourselves from the moment as it is, this is how we are changing a non-interrupted state into an interrupted state. As such then, the continuous nature of awareness itself cannot be present for us. When we look at change then, change can be the change towards awareness and therefore towards the increase of clear, spacious, uninterrupted energy that is accessible and available to all of us. And it is so because the Buddha was not special. The Buddha was a human being who discovered these things because they are available for everyone to discover. Equally so, the change could be to realize, just simply to realize, that as we interrupt clarity or spaciousness or the continuous nature of the energy of awareness itself, that awareness will take on that new mode. It will take on the new mode of distraction, of unclarity, or cloudedness, or worrisome nature, or depression, or whatever it might be. This is because awareness, again, has no labels. This is why the idea of emptiness comes forward. Awareness has no labels. So this means then that the negative or troublesome states that we all experience throughout a week, a day, whatever, which can include things like greed or worry or stress, etc., that they will go unchanged as personal tendencies until or unless we apply the method that correctly interrupts them. So the teaching that we can take from the Buddha is a two-sided or twofold one. On one side is to simply allow awareness to be what it is and to cultivate that in its non-interrupted, continuous luminous state. Therefore, to realize how we interrupt and distract ourselves from the natural state of awareness and purity. But equally so, there's the other side of that. And the other side is that due to whatever sort of acculturation or sense of responsibility or sense of personal self, we live a life that includes stress, worry, maybe selfishness, etc. And so because of that, there are tendencies that go with that. It would be wise to interrupt those tendencies. It would be wise to cultivate an alternative to those tendencies. And the alternative would be to then cultivate a different continuity. So we would learn to interrupt those states, to recognize them for what they are, to recognize the negativity and the limitation that they give to us, give to others, etc. And we would interrupt that as a method of awareness. So that simply when we realize, and wisely so, that suffering is its own continuous cycle, and that suffering includes discontent, dissatisfaction, the ups and downs of life. But why are there ups and downs of life? Why is there discontent, dissatisfaction? Generally, it's because we don't allow for the continuity of happiness and ease. We're back to the idea of force. And we're back to the idea of why and how we interrupt the goodness or the ease and awareness for something usually much smaller, usually a decrease of both awareness and a decrease of our experience as well. And lastly, there's the idea of that if we bring continuity to the positive, then the positive will, in a continuous manner, increase upon itself. And if we continue in habits that are troublesome or negative, then they will also continue uninterrupted. So the Buddha, as he sat and realizes the non-interrupted nature of awareness, actually was landing into the non-interrupted nature of energy itself. That awareness has that energy, of course, that a negative state has that non-interrupted energy, of course. All is energy. One could say all is awareness, but if we are living a non-aware state, we are living trouble, we are living discontent, we are having difficulty in our life, it is clear that unless we work and apply force to change that, it will not change. So what appears as almost a contradiction of should we use force, should we not use force? Should we interrupt, should we not interrupt? All comes down to a very simple criteria. Sustain with peace the states of life that are non-troublesome. Use force and interrupt states of life that are troublesome. Do that for yourself, do that for others. The Buddha, of course, was not the first to understand that the Buddha was not the first to understand that change conditions all of existence. But what the Buddha brought to that was his realization regarding the nature of awareness and reality, that it is radiant and clear, pure, spacious, thus empty or non-conditioned, and that it is continuous. And that this idea of change applies to the changeable nature of existence, but really not to the nature of awareness. The nature of awareness is dynamic, and therefore one could say constantly in flux and change. Yes, but not in the same way that we live change or try to avoid change within our common everyday existence. So the Buddha realized, that change or impermanence is also part of the very nature of awareness, in that it is dynamic, and therefore he became unafraid of the dynamism of life, of the changeability of life. So how is it so when, again, this could seem like a contradiction? Is awareness continuous? Yes, it is. Is continuous dynamic? Yes, it is. Is dynamic a state of change? Yes, it is. In the same way that the waves on the ocean are constantly a new wave, but they are born of the same ocean. So the wave and the ocean are basically the same one thing, although the wave appears as singular and distinct. So in that way, change appears distinct from awareness and its continuity, but like the wave of the ocean, it is not. So as the Buddha realized this flow of life, he realized that awareness is like a wave. It is perpetually in flow. It is undulating as pure harmony. It is constantly expressing its pure, uninterrupted natural state. Flow is not changeless or permanent. In fact, flow is the very source of all change. And so continuity, flow, are the qualities of awareness, are also the energy qualities of life. And again, as we as human beings try to cling to some sense of stability or permanence, or try to use force to enforce some sort of stability, limitation, concretization, etc., it ends up reverberating back to us with more force. You cannot contain that which is uncontainable, ultimately uncontainable. So the Buddha realized that a significant component of humanity's suffering is this contradiction in our mind. Flow is the source of all change. It is the mother of impermanence. Flow or continuity is the very nature of awareness and reality, and human beings suffer with the desire for stability. But what deeply underlies this desire for stability is the not knowing of the continuous nature of one's continuum of awareness. If we understood ourselves as a continuum of awareness, then we would also understand the flow that awareness is, that life is, and we would not cling to a false sense of stability, a false sense of permanence. So because of this contradiction within ourselves, this confusion within ourselves, we grasp onto all kinds of forms, including of the form of a self-identity, and try to keep forms and our sense of self stable and unchanging. And of course, we're not alone in that. Anything that is sentient prefers the felt sense of changelessness. Polar bears have evolved in an ecosystem that is currently changing, as an example. The evolution of the world is the flow of change. It moves along. There once were dinosaurs on the planet. There once were mastodons on the planet. There are not now, because evolution is that slow-moving evolution of change. It is the continuity of life. So as the global climate change is happening and polar ice caps are melting and polar bears therefore are being affected, is that good or bad? Well, that would be up to everyone's personal decisions as to how they live on the planet. But the point simply is that we are not, human beings are not the only beings that seek changelessness. The tree in our yard seeks changelessness, or at least lives according to a sense of changelessness. So we are not alone in that. The Buddha's insight in this is useful because it is because we grasp a changelessness that which is significant and useful to our lives sometimes is not always registered. It's because we're clinging to something in front of us that we might miss the beauty or the generosity or the kindness or the moment of spontaneity that is also right next to us. Many of the ups and downs of unhappiness that we experience or create for others is because we want something to last. Yet, ultimately, this is impossible. In one moment, someone makes us happy. But will it perpetually be the case that that one person will always make us happy? No, of course not. And equally so, in one moment, a person can make us upset. Is it also logical that that person will always make us upset? No. So the Buddha reported to us that we cannot predict when change will happen, nor what change will happen. And since we spend so much force thinking and emoting on trying to control things so that we know when change will happen, or think that we know when change will happen, that all of this ultimately comes down to more labels. All of this comes down to more force, to interrupting things as they are. We are left with a conundrum. Do we get involved in life or not get involved in life? Are we all supposed to sit under trees and just meditate? No, of course not. That was then, this is now. And that's a label. What we can take from the Buddha's experience is the threefold nature of his experience. Awareness simply is. It already is. It already is here. It already is now. If we allow it to be, if we stop hindering our own self-awareness, if we stop obscuring our own self-awareness, if we engage self-awareness as it is, instead of wanting it to look like or taste like or be like something else. The Buddha experienced that in that continuous existence of awareness, as he was experiencing it, that awareness is clear, is luminous, is uninterrupted unless he chose to interrupt it. We too will experience the exact same thing, and do, when we have clarity, leave it alone, and don't interrupt it. We also experience from the Buddha's experience that all life is dynamic, and that awareness is too. Awareness is actually very engaged, which is why the Buddha engaged the rest of his life. So as we experience what we will of awareness, we will all find that radiance, clarity, luminosity. That helps us with the clarity of our life. It helps us make clear our life. And that clarity, that radiance, goes forward from us. We will find all the time that when we act with clarity, act with radiance, that only one thing will result: goodness. Goodness will go forward from us. Equally so, as we realize how often the labels in our mind that then cause reaction in our emotions, cause disappointment within our life, cause all manner of things, that those labels are unnecessary. And that can be a wonderful experiment to do for oneself. For 1 hour, how many labels are constant, nanosecond immediate within our mind that are just unnecessary? And as we do an experiment like that, we realize how quickly we interrupt a moment with a small limiting factor called a label. We also will realize that only in the awareness of oneness will we discover that we are all in this together. That the mosquito, the rain, the dog, the family member, the stranger are all sharing the same sentient experience of interrupted or non-interrupted life, of force being applied to them or upon them, or reacting to force being applied. We all will experience that we all want peace, that we delight in spaciousness, that we delight in clarity. And that is so from our pet, who hears with clarity what we want, and it is so of the plants in our yard, who receive from us the clarity of how we are going to interact with them, just like human beings in our life, who receive clarity. And therefore, all share in a continuity of awareness, of goodness, of the non-interrupted flow of goodness when we enhance that. And so as we bring this to a close, we can ask ourselves, how am I doing with my own awareness? We can check in and see, am I feeling bright? Am I feeling spacious? Is my mind bright? Is my mind cluttered? Have I interrupted my own thoughts? Has someone else or something else interrupted my thoughts? Have I allowed interruption and distraction to be what is going on? Then we can ask ourselves, well, why? If we are in a clear, bright, spacious mind state, a good feeling inside, authenticity, integrity, happiness, we can still ask why. How is that is present for you? My guess is that we will all find that when there is happiness and peace, it is because we are simply being, and nothing is interrupting that moment of simple being. We might also find that moment is a moment of giving, and so that's flow. That's a continuity of goodness going out from us, because we're feeling goodness inside us. We will also find that as we check in with ourselves, we will find the core inside us of awareness and its brightness and the many ways in which that brightness wants to manifest and demonstrate. So when we realize the full range of awareness and realize also that there's not a reason to default to the small, to default to the distraction, but instead to abide within the continuous nature of awareness as it is. And lastly, as a check-in, we can ask ourselves about this force quality. It's very easy to feel force. It's very easy to feel it and hear it in our tone of voice, to feel it within our muscles, feel it within our tummy. One of the best ways to recognize if we are in a forceful way is to feel if we are smiling. Where there is a smile, there is usually ease. And when there is not a smile, quite often there is force going on. So we can check in with that. Feel the flow of ease. Feel the flow of peace. Feel the flow of clarity. Feel ourselves soften and open to the moment, to awareness as it is. In that, then, we all will experience something just like the Buddha did. And we will experience it on the measure and the way in which we can, right here, right now, in our life. We will experience how the continuity of suffering and discontent is what it is unless and until we in our small way, we in our very active way, adjust that. When we interrupt the causes of suffering, then something else can result. When we sustain the benefits of awareness, then the benefits of awareness will result. Doing that then, We all are taking the Buddha's insights into the condition of life, into our life. The Buddha's insights were very simple. Awareness is. It already is. Awareness is simple. It is flawless, flowing, uninterrupted, and bright. It is peaceful, and nothing need interrupt that peace. We can all live any measure of that. That's the beauty of the gift of the Buddha's experience. Because he was a human being, we can experience it too. So may all beings know the peace that is within. May all beings find the clarity that already is here. And may we all realize that together, and only together, that all people desiring clarity, desiring peace, and acting in that way, will the world change for the better. Thank you. Love you all. Hope the world create a good day.